Okay, so you're welcome to pose your questions. Just put your hands up so that Yusuf can hand you a mic.
Can you just remind us the other speakers who are joining us virtually?
Okay, we had, Alan Oliver and Andrew Cox. Andrew Oliver from ProQuest or Ex Libris, and Andrew Cox from Oclc. Sorry, sorry, I'm looking at other notes here. Sorry for that. Are they there? Can we continue?
Andrew is there, but he's just not on the screen.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you. So do we have any questions from the floor? Yusuf, can you just give Saf the mic, please?
Testing. This is just a question for Norman, and in regards to the makerspace, do you think you guys will be able to assist students from the university in improving their learning experience, those with disabilities? For example, students that's visually impaired that uses Braille, for example.
Let me take that question because from practical experience, well, I had interactions with a staff member who was actually involved with somebody that was partially blind. And in doing so, we actually experimented in actually printing poetry in a local language in Braille. So that is one example of how we can adapt to those needs. And I know in the Learning Commons they do have equipment for actually people like, let's say, with disabilities and that, like, let's say for visual use. And we can change like equipment or need when required. And also work with maybe a department on campus, like I did in the past at UCT, where we actually worked with staff members, and the disability unit had very specialized software and equipment for students as such.
Thank you, Norman. There's another question there.
Thank you, Samuel. I've got a question for you. I thought that was an absolutely excellent talk. Thank you very much, and I feel very enthused about FAIR principles now with research data, and want to go and make sure we're doing something about that. I wondered, though, from your talk, it wasn't clear to me, with all the tools that you were looking at, who it was who was going to, you were envisaging would apply those tools. Would it be the library staff, or would it be our academic colleagues? And if it's our academic colleagues, what's your value proposition to them to encourage them to do that?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. So those tools can actually be used by researchers and to a large degree by data curators. So with regards to the first tool, the FAIR data maturity model, that would be generally for your library staff because they're providing the services that support fairness. The data management planning tool, Data Stewardship Wizard, is at least supposed to be provided by a library, but it's used by the researchers. The value proposition in that case actually has to do with the degree to which they can actually receive research grants, because the thing is the research data should at least be made openly accessible as per certain funder mandates. And this is a tool that actually incorporates those core requirements that I showed you. They were actually developed by Science Europe, which is a consortium of various funders. So it's actually in the process of adhering to those principles that researchers can actually be awarded those grants. So it's almost like a carrot that you dangle in front of them. And it's fairly easy to use, and it also ensures that by the time that the research data project has actually been completed, the data are fair. You can actually prove that they're fair. The other three tools, the last three tools are really supposed to be used by librarians, so they're not really for use by the researchers. So you can actually check the degree to which your resources are actually very compliant. The example that I showed you was actually from a data set taken from Stellenbosch University's repository, and contrary to what you would have thought, we would have thought that it would have a very high score. It was above 50, but it was a 54%. So there's room for improvement in that sense. But generally speaking, these tools are supposed to be used by librarians to support the researchers.
Thank you, Sam. There's also a question from Alan, but I would also like to remind our virtual attendees that you are welcome to post your questions on the platform, and we will deal with them as well. Alan?
Yes, thank you very much. Hi, Alan, as well as Andrew. I was trying to think, and I had to take out the program now because, you know, we had a break since, it's about, what, an hour and a half before, since we heard Alan, and I was wondering, what did you talk about? And then I remember the one thing that stood out for me that you mentioned, and particularly your comment afterwards, Naomi, was around the, is it the data, something about recommendation, and maybe, so maybe Alan can just remind us about that and some of the examples that he gave. And my question about this assistant, and if I understood correctly, the focus there is also in terms of systems and collections, and that it can be, we don't have to do it manually. It can be in you know, if there are mistakes that can be identified, and then also how to fix that. So I'm sort of trying to look at it as an application that any library can use, and to what extent, you know, it can help us, and also it's something that is maybe more useful perhaps for service providers like the company that you work for. So that is just to Ellen, and if I could just ask Andrew, and I think a similar kind of question in terms of what you had shared with us in terms of what OCLC's research using OCLC's data, what it tells us about, you know, whether in terms of obviously from the language side and various aspects, but to what extent can that also be used or applied in libraries which can help us to either enhance, understand our collections, and how we better serve our clients. Yeah, so I'm sort of looking for how do we apply this in our libraries, and maybe not everything will work for all libraries, but if you could, for a small size library, medium size, but maybe this is one thing. So if I go here, that I can use this to help me to understand this and how to provide a service.
Thank you. So, Alan, would you like to go first? Respond
Yes,
to Alan?
I will. Yes, thank you for the question. And well remembered, in fact. You remembered a lot of the details. Just to confuse things, I think I actually changed shirt as well during the time since I spoke. So don't worry, it was just 1.5 hours ago. So I talked about our data analysis and recommendation assistant, or DARA. And the important thing I think to mention here is that this is really analyzing data only on our higher education platform. So it's not an application that can work without being on the higher education platform. And it's more focused on looking at the configuration and looking at the setup and looking at the opportunities that exist to configure and customize your system because we have data from other libraries. So data that can be shared, generic data, in fact, almost from other libraries. So really a tool, an additional tool as part of the platform focused on optimization of configurations. And I'll pass to Andrew.
Thanks, Alan. So yeah, with OCLC, I think OCLC has a lot of the sort of similar analytic tools for local library analysis. This is something that we've all become used to in our library management systems, ILSs, et cetera. So my answer is similar to Alan's, is that in that the potential here is looking at a broader array of data and able to do more collective collection analysis and compare your own libraries activities with other libraries. So the example I gave of the consortium looking at the awards data, implicit in that was that the consortium members had agreed to compare their collections to each other to see what their strengths were in various areas, so that they weren't all buying the same titles that could very easily go back and forth. A lot of the transactional analysis so far, OCLC has a product called Green Glass that is very sort of item specific. It's more geared towards making more space in libraries, determining what kinds of things can go into offsite storage and things like that. But the direction is certainly more towards the collection analysis kinds of things. Where are my strengths of collection? Where are my peers' strengths in collections? And where is the collective strength amongst a number of libraries? So I was giving a glimpse of some of the research that's leading into those things. But that's certainly the direction, I think, is that sort of collective collection analysis.
Okay, thank you for that. We have some questions on from the virtual platform, and there was, okay, see that, okay. Sorry, it's jumping around. There's one more practical general question, and I think all of you would also like to know where the slides and the presentations will be available afterwards. And I can tell you that it will be available on the virtual platform after the symposium. So you're welcome to go to the virtual platform, log in with the email address that you used to register, and you will be able to access everything there. And then we have a question for Andrew. And Andrew, I apologize for getting your surname wrong earlier. Andrew,
all right.
The question is the OCLC Worldcat database accessible for academic libraries through an API or batch access to analyze our own holdings to derive our own insights for our own research needs?
Yes, I would urge you to, a quick Google search will find this, the OCLC Developer Network. There are a number of APIs available. The Worldcat Search API is the most popular. A lot of times researchers, even external researchers outside of libraries, will be looking for access to that API in order to do that kind of research. It's very good for if you know what kind of data you're looking for. It's not particularly good for harvesting if you're not sure what you're looking for. So I would encourage folks that are interested in sort of deeper research projects to reach out to me. You can do that at my address, which was in the slides, or at OCLC Research at oclc.org for data provisioning kinds of access. But yes, there are several APIs available from OCLC that you can use for that kind of research. OCLC Developer Network.
Thank you. That's good to know. The next question on the virtual platform, I'm not quite sure who's going to answer that, and I think I will even put it open to the floor. I think some of our library directors may want to answer that. Academic libraries battle commercial interests, dollar pricing and budget cuts. Institutional managers prioritize traditional services to supply documents online or print. what is the business case for libraries to shift resources to innovations in research data management? Any of our presenters want to try and answer that? Sam?
So I'm a manager of research data services. I don't think I can actually dodge this one. It's a very difficult question to answer, and I would like to be able to just throw it back to the person, but I can't. But what I can state is, okay, one of the things that one can consider is that research data are now being viewed as as research publications in their own right. So to an extent, they sort of like are on the same level as research publications. So if resources are being devoted to the publication of research articles, then a similar argument can be made for innovations or funding to be allocated to facilitate the publication of research data and to make it the research data accessible. Secondly, if you look at future trends or the current trends with regards to data being viewed as a collection offered by libraries in order to facilitate computational analysis or data science, things of that nature, one would assume that funding must at least be allocated to the research data because that is a source for secondary analysis by researchers. The business case part maybe can probably be supplemented by more senior members who are in attendance right now. I'll yield to the floor at this point.
Kate?
Thank you. So I could have a go at that if you like. So from a business case perspective, I think we need to move away from thinking that business cases are just about money. I think business cases are about what we do. And I would say that research data is something that we do. It's about a knowledge base that allows people to stand on the shoulders of giants, and it's something we should be providing. So if I were to write a business case for that, I would be looking at what are we here for, what do we do? Because actually, I don't think it is just about the money. I think it's about more than that.
Thank you. Good point. Any other question from the floor?
I might just jump. Can I jump? Oh, sorry.
Yes, I don't know.
I was just going to say, in regards to the research data management question, libraries are stewards. They steward and collect scholarly resources, and data is one of those scholarly resources. So hopefully, I'm echoing what was already said. But I think, the goal is to make our data work harder, to make it repeatable, to make it part of the collections that we actually steward, just like the traditional things that we are.
Thank you. Professor Ochola has a question.
Thank you very much. I know that makerspace was one of the trends mentioned earlier in our presentations yesterday, and it's wonderful that the University of Stellenbosch has it in the library. My question is cost effectiveness. From the samples that you are giving, I noticed that you're dealing with a very small number of people at the moment. Would you like to comment on the cost effectiveness of having such a unit now or in the future? I know that it may be unfair to make the judgment right now, but what do you predict will happen in the next near future for your sustainability from cost effectiveness point of view?
Thanks for that question. So at the moment, we are not charging for anything besides actual 3D printing. And we're basing the 3D printing on a cost recovery model. And in this, so we charge our users, but we charge an amount that is quite close to what we buy the filament for. And we add also another amount to make up for the maintenance costs of the 3D printers. And we do this with a mindset that we don't want to be a for-profit service. We don't want to become an inaccessible service to students, to our student population. And so at this point, we've got some cost recovery in place for 3D printing. We don't have cost recovery in place for our other services like the robotics and the circuit boards and those smaller parts. But I think at this point we want to see what the uptake of use is and what will be the cost implications for us. Yeah, so I think to not answer your question, but to try to attempt to answer at least part of your question, we are adopting the wait and see model for now.
I have another question for Andrew and Alan, and it's the same question for both of them. But I just want to also just comment on the last question that Dennis raised. And it'd be nice, maybe Isak could also comment on the University of Pretoria's practice with regard to cost effectiveness and cost recovery in terms of a service like a makerspace. Of course, they have expanded quite a bit since then. But just to actually, we heard about the launch, and even before the launch, when I reported to the Senate Library Committee that we are planning to implement a makerspace, I could see around the table, it was like, what and why does this is the library, what does this have to do with the library? And at the day of the launch, as you heard, the whole executive was there. This was like in still the middle of the first part of the lockdown. So I think maybe, yes, they all came, but they probably was looking for something that they can attend after being under lockdown for a number of months. But one of them had asked me, yes, why is this in the library? Should it be in the library? And the Vice-Chancellor, in fact, said, he made the point, and he said he was excited that we're doing this, but he did make the point that in order for this to be successful and for have the buy-in and the understanding, that it should be integrated in the curriculum. And as we've heard from the colleagues here, there had been these opportunities, as Jeremiah indicated, so it is absolutely exciting for us that we can actually do this in partnership, and that it is actually going to be exactly as what we had hoped for. So again, as Jeremiah said, it's not about, you know, and yes, the COO was concerned about, you know, who's going to pay for it, because of course they have the model, had the model at the launch lab, but we don't see it as a new or separate service. We see it as the same service as we would have provided, like all the other services that we provide in the library. And yes, we will have to pay for certain things, but this is just part of, if we talk about innovation, we should talk about integrating into the curriculum and so on and so on. But let me come to the question, and now I completely forgot. Oh yes, now I remember. Both of you have not mentioned that, but it was interesting in all the other discussions that we've had up till now, since yesterday, everybody had mentioned the whole issue around skills development and building capacity. And yes, we heard about these tools, and I mean, if you look at the OCLC group of the staff who are involved there, other cases we heard we don't need engineers to do this, but it can be daunting to think, you know, and to what extent, what skills do you actually need in the library? Because I do feel it's good that companies like yours, organizations, develop this and allow one to do this, but we also know if we have to apply it, you're going to charge us to use it if it's not open. But I can see how this can help us, but we also want to develop our own staff so that they would be able, that they acquire the skills to be able to do this analytics and analysis in order to help us. So yeah, so yeah, just in terms of what do you think, what is the minimum skills requirement that you do need in libraries in order to be able to use and apply some of these tools that you have mentioned?
You mind if I jump in, Alan? So, two things I want to mention. Two things I want to mention. One, I didn't cover it in more detail when I was talking about the responsible operations report, but there was a section of that report around workforce development and some of the requirements that may come out of that around data science. The second thing is that I'm involved in another activity, a grant that is being led by Drexel University in the States around data science and educating people for data science and building a curriculum for data science and machine learning in libraries and making that curriculum sustainable and freely available. I think you'll see this becoming more and more part of the curriculum. And the analogy that I'd like to make for this is if, you know, I graduated from library school 25 years ago, sort of at the dawn of the web and the beginning of digital libraries. And at that time, there was no agency, there was no general understanding of what it meant to be a digital librarian, right? Now we would just call those people librarians. Over that 25-year period, we created agency in different organizations, we created best practices, we created the skill sets and the kinds of certifications that we expected for people to be librarians in the 21st century versus the 20th century. I think the data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence era we're in right now is very similar. We don't have that agency and set of best practices yet as related to libraries, but it is emerging. The biggest difference now than 25 years ago with digital libraries is the competition, relationships, and co-opetition with the commercial spaces, right? So if we rely completely on the commercial spaces, non-library commercial spaces, I think to provide us these things, they're not going to do it with the level of responsible operations and ethics that I think the library space will. So, I would be looking at library school curriculum changes that are going on, and some of the things that are coming out that I think are going to be freely available to students, to new learners, to existing library workers.
Thank you, Andrew. Alan, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I'll just make a brief comment. So really the tool that I specifically talked about is intended to actually eliminate some of that, the fact that you would need to be skilled at reporting and analytics and so on. Not to say that we don't have other tools as well, but really this is to try to automate using the data, these possibilities wherever possible. So it's part of the platform and the system for which there's obviously training as well.
There's always going to be a responsibility from folks like Ex Libris, like OCLC, to scale innovation by offering tools that make the science that's behind those tools easier to use. So I think that's Alan's absolutely right.
Thank you. I think I just want to comment on Dara and Alan, you mentioned earlier the intuition, and I still feel that even if we have and we use Dara to a limited extent, we still need the knowledge of the user. We need to know our products to know where we should accept Dara's recommendations. So yes, I think that skills of the librarians are definitely still needed there.
I absolutely agree, yeah.
There is time for a question from the virtual platform. Andrew, this is for you. Would OCLC be interested in enhancing the OCLC Worldcat database with academic word lists for African languages which are encoded in Latin script? And then a follow-up, what sort of enhancements are typically done to records that are non-English to enrich them further?
Sure, I'll take a stab at that. So absolutely, like, OCLC is always interested in acquiring more data. We have a project going on right now, which is the shared entity management infrastructure. That is a co-grant with the Mellon Foundation to build a shareable infrastructure around other collections. And I think that might be, linked data might be an avenue for sort of, bringing in auxiliary collections, or the traditional method of loading those data into WorldCat. The Russian example I gave was sort of an extreme example of the non-Latin language activities that are going on. That project is ongoing. It was not a one and done. So we're looking at what other kinds of languages we might be able to do that in. It's very hard when you don't have one-to-one sort of transliteration capabilities to do that. But certainly we're doing that. And we're also, as much as possible, trying to augment data and records with things like classification, whether that's numeric or decimal classification, with subject headings, with the OCLC FAST, the faceted access to subject terminology, and also now, given the linked data experiments, augmenting the WorldCat records with identifiers. So putting more things to go along with the string. So identifiers for person names, identifiers for publishers, identifiers for subjects, to sort of foster that sort of linkification of a traditional MARC record, but sort of foster in new kinds of authority control and also for works as well.
There's another question here from Isak.
It just relates to Alan's request on the makerspace and sort of the payoff and when you can expect to see that. If I look at our own makerspace, we launched in 2015. And the uptake initially was slow because people need to understand what it is, what the value of it is, and what they can get out of it. So when it comes to the maker culture in itself, it's not a culture where you want to make money out of it. The idea is to allow people to be creative and be innovative. But we have the similar setup where we have to recover costs in terms of what we do. But the ultimate payoff that we can see now years later is we are able to fund our own new equipment from the 3D printing that we've done, new tech, and maintain and sustain our printers. But the big payoff is the value that it brings to the research community and the student community, where we're at a point now where we play an important role in terms of the researchers' research projects, where the makerspace co-publishes with researchers, or we enable the researchers and we bridge the gap in terms of their needs to enable them to reach a point where they can actually go through with their research project and publish papers. So sort of underpinning scholarly activity, throughout the whole sort of research life cycle, where, either assisting in terms of creating objects or assisting with the creation of data analysis, whatever the case might be. It's such a broad spectrum, but that's the ultimate payoff, is to integrate into the teaching, learning, and research activities of the institution, and then the added benefit of being able to buy new toys if you do make money out of printing. But it takes a while. It's not an immediate process. So, and I want to commend the makerspace, and I'm very proud to see more makerspaces in the country. And I can clearly see it will take that approach, and we will see that pay off for you eventually as well. Right.
Thank you, Isak. And I think that brings us to the end of this day. Alan or Andrew, do you perhaps have final words that you want to leave us with? Or
Just my thanks for the invitation, and it was great to be with you, even virtually, today.
Thank you very much.
The same from me, actually. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us and presenting, and thank you also to my colleagues Sam, Norman, and Jeremiah. Thank you very much for your contributions. And with that, we can end the day, except for the dinner later tonight at the Lanzarote Manor Kitchen. It's the same space where we had lunch yesterday afternoon. So we look forward to meeting you there at 7 o'clock tonight. Oh, okay. Did you hear that? There's going to be a surprise. And that will be a surprise to see what Ellen has as a surprise for us. Oh, Colleen has a surprise. Oh, even better. So thank you, colleagues. You can go and have a quick rest, and then we see you at 7 o'clock. Thank you.